Before we get into the video, can we just all collectively stop supporting or engaging with things that say in the title, "We are so back"? It's like an internet thing that it needs to be gone like yesterday. Anyways, let's get into the video. Alright, Helldivers, today we are going to be doing a roundup of all the buff changes coming to the game next week so far. We're also going to talk about the new Warbond coming out. I guess we'll talk about the Warbond first because I feel like that's maybe the least exciting part, and then we'll get into the buffs. And then obviously when we're talking about the buffs, we'll talk about the good parts about it. And at the end, maybe we'll talk about some concerns with the changes and the balance coming next week and how it might overall affect the game. So if you like Helldivers 2 content, hit that like and subscribe button. It's all we do on this channel, and let's get into the video. All right, next week, Helldivers, we have the premium Warbond chemical agents coming out. Now, what's exciting about this Warbond is they kind of change the mold up even more, where before we get a primary weapon, this time we don't get a primary weapon. We're actually getting a strategy. We're getting two stratagems, actually. We're getting the sterilizer and this guard dog breath. Both shoot out chemical spray as opposed to fire. I mean, let's be honest, it's basically just a reskin of the flamethrower and that effect to be more of a green effect, but still, I think it's a nice addition to the game, a little more variety. Actually, the most exciting thing for me in this Warbond is that stim pistol. So you are going to be able to make builds or a playstyle where you are the team medic. So you bet your ass there's going to be a medic loadout build that I'm going to do in the future, maybe sooner rather than later, but I think that's probably the most interesting part about the Warbond. I'm really excited about that. But otherwise, a lot of green things. I'll definitely be checking it out and give my thoughts on it. I'll probably wait a few days before I kind of review it because I really want to sink in some hours and kind of distance myself from people who do it in like the first 3 hours of getting everything. So just know that'll be probably a little bit delayed before I give like my overall thoughts on it. And I know we haven't seen Lady in a while, but here she is. She's getting huge. All right, don't look over. All right, you're not staying for the video. Goodbye. So let's move into the buffs that Arrowhead have been posting about since the 10th, so 3 days ago as of this video. And every day around 9 a.m. Eastern, they've been posting, throwing out a buff that's coming in next week's patch. So there's going to be more up until then. Maybe I'll do a second roundup video talking about these buffs. But the first one we got was the flamethrower buff, and they're increasing the damage by 33%. And they're basically reverting it back to pre-escalation of freedom. I think this is definitely needed. I think this is a smart move by them. Some concerns with it, just right off the bat, is how is this going to affect the primary flamethrower we got and the secondary flamethrower? Are those even going to be touched by this? It doesn't say so in the Discord post they made, but that'll be something definitely to look at when the patch goes live next week. But overall, yes, I think this was much needed for the flamethrower. What they did to it basically made it not a viable pick in the higher tier difficulties. So a very welcome change. I think this was really needed. And yeah, let's get into the next post they made. Now, buff number 2, this one I'm actually more excited for. They are buffing the railgun. Thank God. The railgun has gone through a turbulent development, to say the least. It started off really strong. They nerfed it into the ground. They've brought it up a little bit, so it's a little bit more viable. I like using the railgun a lot, especially against the bots because of the crit spots and one-tapping hulks. But now they're just increasing the durability damage by a lot to 225, and then increasing that charge damage by 100%. So this thing's going to be pretty nasty. I think the big thing to really test out with this is how does it handle Bile Titans. It's gonna feel kind of weird, admittedly, if this thing can 2-tap a Bile Titan or something like that. I think a sweet spot would be, I don't know, 6 to 10 shots to take down a Bile Titan. Because right now for a Bile Titan, it takes so many shots. What, like 20? I don't know. It's not a viable pick for against the Bile Titans. Now, what I think this thing should be doing is taking out those heavier targets like the Hulks and all the variants of the Chargers, because right now it does feel a little bad to be using this against a Behemoth Charger. It just takes like 4 shots sometimes. It's just, yeah, it'd be nicer if it was more like a 2 with like the regular Charger, but we'll see how this thing pans out. I'm hoping it's not too overpowered where they're going to need to, bring it down again. But this one is definitely one to look out for, and it's probably what I'm going to be first testing out with the patch. Now on to buff number 3, the Breaker Shotgun. They are, again, this one came out hot on release. This was the go-to pick for everything. And then they kind of nerfed the ammo economy down, and it was it's an okay pick. Now I think I put it in B rank, so it was good, it's still viable. But now they are increasing the magazine size to 16, and they are increasing the stagger force by 5. This one I'm probably not going to test right out the gate because I'm just not the biggest fan of the breaker shotgun's style of play. I'll get around to it eventually. I don't think this was the most pressing buff needed. I definitely would have liked them to post about the Liberator Penetrator first before this breaker shotgun, because right now it just seems like they're reverting a lot of changes to weapons and stratagems that were really good at launch that they've nerfed over time. Because again, the railgun was really good at launch, breaker shotgun really good at launch. Flamethrower actually has been seeing, it's just getting buffed and buffed and buffed and buffed, and then obviously the killer nerf to it for Escalation of Freedom, but now they're just buffing it up again. So kind of weird that they just keep sticking around these guns that they've been tuning a lot and not touching the guns that probably need the most help that they haven't addressed yet. So we'll see what they keep posting, but this one kind of probably will be on the back burner as far as something I check out at first. But let's move on to the post that was made today. And today's post was more like a nerf to the automatons, not so much a buff for, I mean, it's a buff for us, but not a direct buff. The rocket devastators, their rockets being limited, and then the collision on their rockets definitely being smaller. One of the most annoying things about fighting the automatons is just being stun locked and ragdolled around by rockets. Not to mention those automatons have like laser precision targeting with those rockets, so it's really annoying to be a fair distance away and they fire a volley at you and almost all the rockets hit you or like are directly near you. It's not generally how in video games I would say rocket type enemies work. Usually they are more, you know, they're a little more inaccurate, and just to give you a heads up that they're there. And then, you know, if you don't pay attention or move or deal with it accordingly, then they'll hit you. But in, yeah, Helldivers 2 with rockets, nope, they right out the gate, they're fucking, they just get you. I'm glad to see this change, and this definitely will make fighting the automatons feel a lot better. So overall, with these balance patches, with what they've been providing, with what information they've been providing us so far, I think these are all good changes. Obviously, we have more to come, so I'm excited about those. But overall good. I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. What I like about Arrowhead is the fact that they are continuing to communicate. A lot of companies, when they fall under, I would say, fire from their community, they kind of like draw back and just don't really communicate anymore. But Arrowhead has, you know, they've held their hands up to the issue and are, you know, addressing it head on. So I really appreciate that. Hopefully we don't have to learn this lesson again, but who knows? So some concerns I have with all these changes, because these are big swings in percentages, is us getting on the verge of maybe being too powerful. I think making the players too powerful is better for the long term and something maybe to address down the line, but you don't want to be too powerful where that challenge goes away. But for example, in Destiny 2 at the moment, there is an issue where the Guardians, the players, have just been continually buffed and buffed and buffed, and we get so many new tools that the game is almost too easy because of how strong the player character is with how many different options they have. Now there are things like dungeons and raids where it is scaled a little bit higher, and definitely the difficulty is probably where they want it, but just in general gameplay for Destiny 2, it's just way too easy, like piss easy. So I think that is a concern that Helldivers 2 might run into down the line, but again, that'll be something down the line where if you are nerfing things all the time, you're dealing with that issue in the short term, and that can really hurt a community. I definitely lean on the side that buffing is a better option, and then you can kind of tune things down the line as opposed to just always just bringing us down while, you know, making the enemies stronger and stronger and stronger. So hopefully they kind of get that philosophy, and we as a community, when the time comes where maybe we need to be brought down a peg, it'll be understandable. Because one of the best parts about Helldivers 2 is the sandbox. It's how when you fight a charger, everybody's fighting the same charger. There is no scaling. It's kind of like how in Dark Souls, when you are fighting enemies, when you're fighting bosses, there's no difficulty. When you beat a boss, you beat that boss, and you can kind of build a community around that. It makes everybody kind of feel like they're on the same playing field. That's how I kind of feel about Helldivers 2, is that we're all on the same playing field. We're all dealing with the same enemies. So it's nice to hear all different opinions about, you know, from the casual side to the higher tier side. And from a balancing standpoint, I always think it's better to balance for the casual audience, because PvE challenging games, I don't really think they have like a lot of like longevity. Off the top of my head, there have to be like MMOs that have really, I guess, competitive PvE modes, but I don't think Helldivers 2 is that type of game, and I don't think it needs to be. Right now, I do think it has a challenging sandbox if you let it. If you get too crazy in this game and not respect kind of the enemies, they will humble you, and I feel like that's a really endearing factor about Helldivers 2. We're not completely overpowered. Our Helldivers are very fragile, and let's not forget that, our teammates are probably one of the biggest killers of all our Helldivers because of the stratagems and how powerful they are and how little regard squad mates can have for each other's well-being. So there will always be that factor of dying. So I'm not too concerned about us being overpowered. It's just something to maybe keep in the back of our minds as these buffs roll out, and maybe an issue that it's like months, maybe a year down the line that we need to address. But yeah, right now I like what they're doing with the buffs. We have to keep in mind what these buffs will do to the overall gameplay and how it's going to move the needle for us. And in this instance, it's kind of moving us back to where we should have been maybe, but we don't want to keep moving up and up and up. Or if we do, we're going to have to address it eventually. So I'm totally okay with all these changes and all these buffs. I think it's a good move. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the current post that they've been doing, talking about buffs, and then my overall thoughts about the Warbond. I think the Warbond's going to be pretty cool. I mean, I'm not the biggest chemical guy, but I think that stim pistol is the most exciting part of the Warbond for me. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. As a bonus, I will give my 60-second review of Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2, I think, is like a 9 out of 10 game. I think it is exactly what Space Marine 1 was, but they've just added more to it. Very simple combat, but it feels really good, really impactful, really gory, really bloody, super masculine game. Definitely feels like it's from 2010s, and man, I really have missed that vibe of just like brotherhood and like killing shit and like, yeah, I feel like we've been missing that type of game in the community. I don't think it has like the longevity of something like Helldivers 2. I don't know why people would make that comparison, but it's definitely a fun time. It's more like, it's a very compact, action blockbuster. The multiplayer is fun, but it can kind of get repetitive. It'll be probably more fair to review the game when it has its seasons roll out, because right now I think the biggest critique of the game is you just want more of it, and it doesn't give you that. And I think that's completely fine, because when you're done with it, you're done with it, and you had a great time. And yeah, so that's what I think about Space Marine 2. Good game. I think until the patch, I'm not going to be playing too much Helldivers 2, because when a new big giant patch is coming out, you want to be really fresh for that experience. So I'll definitely be obviously keeping track of the buffs, and I might make a second roundup video for them. But other than that, I guess I'll see you next time, Helldivers. Peace.